Hello. So it's probably worth saying that we're not either of us actually from Essex, but we're both from Suffolk. But it's our adopted home, and we love it. So I'm Rob, this is Angus. We're both project officers in Essex, and we're going to take this opportunity to show off some of the work we've been up to in Essex since the Essex County Council Archaeological Unit became part of ASC in, it says here 2013, but I think Lou, you said 2014, but roundabouts there. Facts are not important. Since this time, we've continued to undertake projects across the region, and these projects amount to a large body of work, which together represent a significant contribution to the archaeological record of East Anglia. Each site offering new insights into our understanding of land use in a specific area. We're going to present the results of some recent extensive projects that have enabled an understanding of landscape-wide settlement morphology and the way in which development-led archaeology can contribute to our understanding of it. We'll start in Heybridge, which is one of the roundhouses at Heybridge is photographed on the right there, where a recent project has contributed to an already extensively studied landscape. After this, we'll move to Harlow, where we've undertaken large excavations over the last decade, which provide us with a comprehensive picture of prehistoric and Roman activity in the region. And finally, we'll move to Central Essex, where a number of projects are at an early stage of post-ex, but are yielding exciting results from which we're piecing together an image of a thriving Roman and pre-Roman landscape. The first site we're going to look at is at Westcombe Park. It's in Heybridge, just north of Maldon in Essex, on the Blackwater estuary. We carried out an initial evaluation and 9 subsequent excavation areas over a 76-hectare site. The investigations revealed insights into the nature of occupation in this part of the Blackwater Valley, spanning the early Neolithic to early medieval periods. The site sits in the middle of a landscape that's been heavily investigated over the last 50 years. And this map shows the location of our site in its wider context. Westcombe Park is highlighted in red, with yellow indicating the locations of other sites. To the north and east of our site, numerous large excavations undertaken in advance of gravel extraction demonstrated extensive occupation spanning the Bronze Age and Iron Age periods. To the south and southwest, investigations by our own Mark Atkinson at Elms Farm and Crescent Road together exposed the remains of a large Roman town which had its origins in the late Iron Age. On this plan of the site, I have the trenches marked in blue with the excavation areas in green. I've circled the locations of each settlement that I'm going to be talking about, with the middle Bronze Age settlement highlighted in green in the southeast there. In blue in the centre of the site is a late Bronze Age settlement, and the red circles in the west are all of the Middle Iron Age settlements. The focus of settlement moves from east to west during this time, which reflects a pattern that's also evident in the wider vicinity on those other sites. So, in the Middle Bronze Age, an enclosed settlement constitutes the earliest direct evidence for sedentary occupation in the Blackwater Valley. The settlement comprised a rectangular enclosure formed of ditches and fences. Inside this, there were 6 long houses, fences that formed internal routeways, and other pits and post holes that would have formed various other contemporary structures and internal boundaries. We also found a large watering hole located just outside of the enclosure to its southwest. These photos are of the watering hole. We had exceptional organic preservation in the lower waterlogged deposits, which gave us a great insight into the way that the water hole was constructed and into its immediate and wider environment. The top left shows us recording the watering hole. You can see the stretcher there that Alistair kindly lent us, that I think we still have in Essex, that we used to lift the timbers that we found in the watering hole. On the right are some column tins in section, and the 2 bottom photos give you an idea of the sort of quality of the timbers that we had surviving in this watering hole. The large oak plank on the left there we think would have formed a step or possibly was part of a revetment structure. And this stake and horizontal timber we think is this in situ surviving revetment. These are some of the highlights. At the top is one of 32 amber beads found in one of the enclosure ditches. These are a pretty rare find in Britain. Some of these are actually photographed outside on one of the displays. On the right there is one of 3 entire Devil Rimbri urns being excavated. In the middle are 2 of the upright stakes forming part of that revetment we looked at earlier. They've been cleaned up here in post-ex and look a little bit nicer. And on the left is a Bronze Age loom weight. Bottom right is a photo of one of the 6 longhouses that I mentioned that characterise the settlement. These are an exceptionally rare building type in the British Bronze Age, with only a handful of known parallels in the country. Similar structures are a much more common feature of contemporary Europe, specifically those in Scandinavia and the Netherlands. And the settlement here evidences ties between Essex and the continent at this time. So in the late Bronze Age, activity on the site was in the form of a single enclosed settlement at its centre. A roundhouse, photographed on the right, was integrated into a large enclosure ditch, which was itself integral to an east-west aligned trackway, which presumably would have linked the settlement to other nearby sites. And then during the Middle Iron Age, 3 settlements were distributed across the centre and west of the site. Our excavations produced one of the largest Middle Iron Age pottery assemblages in the Blackwater Valley. And from this, we know that the 3 settlements were probably occupied at the same time during the period and were all out of use by the beginning of the Late Iron Age. Just for a bit of perspective, that Roman town that I spoke about earlier is just down here, so maybe you can start to see where I'm going. But a little bit more about the Middle Iron Age first. In area H, in the west of the site, was this polygonal ditch enclosure, inside which were 3 roundhouses. Photographed on the right is the largest of these, which is the one labelled B13 on the plan. 2 smaller roundhouses to the north of this are probably ancillary buildings. This Neolithic polished axe, which again is on display in the other room, was found in one of these ring gullies of one of the smaller roundhouses in area H, raising questions of curation and symbolic significance over such a long period of time. Other Iron Age settlements comprise a single isolated roundhouse in area A, top left there, which is photographed to the right of that plan, and a large settlement was partially exposed in area G, which is shown at the bottom. So the plan on the left and the photo on the right are actually sort of showing the same thing. Hopefully you can make out this enclosure ditch is here. So we only have the very southern extent of this settlement, which continues beyond the site boundary underneath some overhead cables. We know the full extent of this enclosure from crop marks. This plan plots the known crop marks alongside our site location. I've circled area G there, and in red and pink, in blue and pink, are the crop marks that are visible in various different satellite and aerial images. Hopefully you can see that our area G remains from the southern extent of a large rectangular enclosure which extends north beyond the boundary. These crop marks also demonstrate how this enclosure is connected to contemporary settlements like the settlement in the late Bronze Age by trackways. Various parts of this landscape have been investigated and have been shown to be contemporary, and we know that Westcombe Park at this time forms part of an interconnected network of settlements that existed in the Blackwater Valley during the Middle Iron Age. This shifting settlement focus that is evident at Westcombe Park is reflected on sites in the wider vicinity. The excavations at Westcombe Park filled a gap in this landscape, allowing for a fuller understanding of its development. And it seems to be the case that throughout the Middle Bronze Age, Late Bronze Age, and early to Middle Iron Age, the Westcombe Park occupied a multifunctional agricultural landscape, populated by dispersed but connected rural settlements. There is a distinct change at the end of the Iron Age, and contemporary to the earliest development of the Roman town at Elms Farm, which is located just a short distance to the southwest. After this time, activity within the site is purely agricultural, with very little evidence for occupation. This gives you an idea of the nature of the change from the prehistoric to Roman periods. In area D, where we had that enclosed Middle Bronze Age settlement, in the Roman period we just have a series of ditches and fields with interconnecting trackways. And in area A, where there was once an Iron Age roundhouse, is now just another Roman field ditch. So the value of the Roman and post-Roman part of the Westcombe Park dataset lies in the way that it juxtaposes the evidence through a densely populated Bronze Age and Iron Age landscape. A similar change is evident across the Blackwater Valley, with most contemporary nearby sites shifting to an entirely agricultural function around this time. And this change is inextricably linked with and best understood as a response to the development of the Roman small town at Elms Farm. Here, activity really intensified in the late Iron Age, with the implementation of various infrastructural elements, for example, the construction of roads that became the basis of what would become a significant settlement in Essex throughout the Roman period. Westcombe Park at this time is peripheral to this settlement. People still lived in the vicinity, but the majority were at Elms Farm. We see a shift from the dispersed settlements of the Bronze Age and Iron Age to a focus on a nucleated settlement with a high population density, being supported by an agricultural hinterland within which Westcombe Park was situated. The site continued to form part of this sort of agricultural hinterland throughout the medieval and post-medieval periods, becoming peripheral to the medieval town of Malden after the Roman town at Elms Farm was abandoned. And that's kind of the journey through prehistory that we uncovered at Westcombe Park. What I've spoken about here is just a small part of the results of the fieldwork, which as a whole provide a detailed picture of the way that the Blackwater Valley has developed. There'll be much more detail on any of these remains in an upcoming monograph, so keep an eye out for this. I'm going to hand over to Angus now, who's going to talk about Harlow.
Thank you, Rob. So yeah, as Rob mentioned, I'm going to touch on two sites in Essex. The first one's in Harlow. And like at Heybridge, this is an area where there's been lots of archaeological development which have helped our understanding of the wider landscape. So this plan shows the areas to the immediate northeast of the modern town centre, with the areas marked in grey showing areas of archaeological investigation, and the area in orange marking the indicative extent of Roman Harlow. I'm going to be talking about two sites which are just 1 kilometre apart and are marked in red. Both demonstrate changes in land use through time. I'm going to start with the Harlow Innovation Park, which is the one on the left, which lies on the route of a trackway projected to have continued to the historic Roman centre. So this plan shows the various phases of fieldwork so far, which have taken place at the Harlow Innovation Park, along with all the dates of finds that have come from them. While it contains features from the Neolithic to post-medieval period, a majority of the remains are of late Iron Age and Roman date, and I'm going to be focusing on the late Iron Age and late Roman periods, as well as touching on some of the later occupation. As mentioned, the site lies on the route of a perceived trackway that you can see running across in purple, and it's also in this photo running from left to right. There's lots of field systems in the area, and this photo on the top right just shows what some of them look like in plan. So the change in landscape can clearly be seen once the site's been phased. And if we start on the left, during the late Iron Age and early Roman period, the site contained an enclosed settlement in the south, along with an accompanying cremation cemetery, lying within a wider landscape formed of multiple fields and enclosures. The alignment of the field systems suggests several areas of use, and the enclosure in the southeast is likely linked with activity within the settlement. The trackway may have existed in some form in this central area, though not as extensive as it was later, and perhaps just as sort of maybe a routeway between dispersed settlements, potentially. By the mid to late Roman period, this has clearly changed, and the enclosed settlement no longer present, and the trackway was improved and extended across the south and north of the site. Some of the fields are obviously retained into this period, but others are no longer in use, and new boundaries were imposed. This could mean, obviously, indicates a movement of settlement, potentially towards the centre of Roman Harlow to the north, potentially, or at least more scattered. Finally, if we jump forward a bit in time to the late Saxon period, further change is apparent, with features only in the south of the site, and that was a farmstead formed of multiple buildings around a courtyard. This was located next to the Roman trackway, which could be coincidental, though it's possible that it was still existent during this period in some form. Obviously, we can say a little about the surrounding landscape, but we're presuming it's probably a wider arable setting. This is a sort of similar trend to the Heybridge site, with the scattered Iron Age settlements seemingly replaced by agricultural landscape as the Roman period progresses. So the next site we're going to talk about in Harlow is Newhall, which is marked here, and this is about 1 kilometre to the east of the Harlow Innovation Park. So the work of this site was conducted in two phases, with Bronze Age through to Saxon remains, though, as with the other Harlow site, a majority of material was of Roman date. And it's actually quite different in a way from the other site. And I'm just going to be focusing on the Bronze Age and late Roman material. So this shows the entirety of the site, which was done in two phases of excavation. And the earliest occupation we found is from the Bronze Age, with the features marked here. As you can see, it's very sparse use, limited to just the two features. There was a barrow in the south, pictured here, and that did have a central burial containing 4 vessels but no bone. And the 4 vessels from that are actually on the table outside, so you can see those. And in the north, the only feature was a crouched burial. So it's obvious there's no other features of this date around the whole area, and the ones that we do have are solely funerary in nature. So it's perhaps suggesting that it could have been part of a wider funerary landscape, potentially with any other remains removed by modern agriculture, potentially. But there's also a complete lack of Iron Age activity in this site, in contrast to the other site. And it could be that it's because there were surviving prehistoric funerary monuments, and they were identified by the Iron Age people and respected, or perhaps it was just used for something else. Who knows? So in the late Roman period, the site use was intensified with a focus in the north of the area. As you can see, a rectangular enclosure was established around a villa on the eastern extent, and within the enclosure were 5 other buildings, which are marked in red, along with fence lines and a kiln. As well as these man-made features, there was a natural spring at the north of the site, which had been utilised and expanded, likely for use as a water source for activities with the enclosure. It's worth noting that this villa was constructed at around the same time that on the other Harlow site, it was moving towards a more agricultural landscape. It's obviously a change in pattern of what's going on. We're just going to look at a couple of these features in a bit more detail, and that's the villa itself and the natural spring or pond in the north. So this shows a more detailed plan of the villa, which was a 13-roomed corridor villa consisting of 2 corridors extending either side of central rooms. As you can see from the photos, the footings were clearly visible in plan, as well as areas of tesserated floor. There's some just there and there, and gravel surface as well. And you can see some of the tesserated floor in that top left picture has survived really well. It wasn't actually excavated any further because it was preserved in situ, but at least we've got a nice plan and some understanding of the villa. In the north of the area was the natural spring, which we know would have existed in the landscape prior to the late Roman use. Though it was in this period, it was enlarged and modified. And as you can see here, it was still functional when we were investigating. It contained a large quantity of material culture, suggesting that it had been used for rubbish disposal as it infilled. And this included a significant quantity of pottery, along with 43 iron objects, including knives and iron fittings, as well as 24 coins. But the most exciting discovery was the dodecahedron. This was made of copper alloy and had 12 faces, with each side having a hole of varying diameter. The use of these objects is highly speculated, with some of the suggested uses including as a survey tool, knitting device, scepter head, or an astronomic device. Some I think are more plausible than others maybe, but it's up to you. There's lots of other suggestions. And there haven't been many of these found in Britain. I think there's only 30, 35, something like that. So that makes it a nice highlight. And that is another find that's on the table outside, so it's worth having a look at that. So that's it from a very brief overview of Harlow. And now we're just going to jump to another site in mid-Essex, where again there's been extensive field work in the area. During some of this work, there's been lots of activity identified. We've got enclosed Iron Age settlements, enclosed sort of maybe late Iron Age Roman settlement, as well as Roman cremation cemetery, amongst many other things. I'm just going to summarise some of the exciting finds from the latest work, though as post-excavation is still ongoing, some of this may change further down the line. So this shows an overview of the most recent fieldwork and shows some of the areas across the landscape. And the scale of these means we've covered quite a concentrated area and have identified multiple enclosed settlement and activity across these. You can see one of the smaller enclosures here, but we had bigger enclosures up in this one and back here and lots of 4-posters. Yeah, it was quite a heavily utilised landscape. While this was going on, we had another job going on about 1 kilometre to the south. And the proximity of the sites can be seen here with the first area in the background, just here. Both of these sites contained evidence of Iron Age occupation, as well as some Roman occupation, so it'll be interesting to see how the dating of these sites relate as post-excavation progresses, to see if they're contemporary or whether they show any sort of movement of settlement or anything like that. This just shows a couple of highlights from those areas, including a double-ditched enclosed Iron Age settlement on the top left, and one of the enclosure ditches under excavation in the bottom left, as well as one of the multiple roundhouses and another area where you might just be able to make out there's a rectangular Iron Age enclosure here, which contained multiple roundhouses and 4 posters. Along with the settlement evidence, there was a large cremation cemetery containing around 100 cremation burials, as well as a small number of inhumations, though the bone preservation was very poor, so some of those are just postulated based on the shape of features and associated finds such as hobnails. There were 5 larger graves, 2 of which are pictured here, which contained multiple vessels alongside unurned cremated bone. One of these included a well-preserved glass bowl, which again is actually on the table outside, and that's found, it's just in the corner here, there it is, in situ. And that's a copper alloy bowl there as well, amongst all the ceramic vessels. This shows another of the larger graves, which again, along with multiple ceramic vessels, contain 2 copper alloy vessels. One shown here with the swan neck handle, while the other, as you can see, and is fairly typical, is cut by a land drain running right through the middle. Work's still ongoing with these graves, as I mentioned, so the analysis of the pottery and metal objects is still in progress, but we're hoping it's going to shed some light on the origin of the cemetery and whether it's contemporary with the adjacent settlement evidence, as well as how it relates to other sites across that area. Watch this space, I suppose, see what happens. Oh, that bowl is also outside, so that's worth looking as well.
So we thought we'd end with a photo of us both having fun in the field. That's obviously how we look day to day. We've squeezed lots of information into 20 minutes there, but hopefully you can see how some of the work we're doing in Essex is sort of contributing, both individually as sites and as sort of landscape understanding, to the archaeological record of Essex. And if you want to know more, keep an eye out on some upcoming publications. Thank you.